UCLA Basketball has already started to put out some feelers for the class of 24, even though they're still looking to fill out their 23 roster. Who is it? Who's warm? Who's cold? Let's talk about it on Locked On UCLA.
You are Locked On UCLA, your daily podcast on the UCLA Bruins. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome, everybody, to the Locked On UCLA podcast. Thanks for tuning in. I'm Zach Anderson-Yoxsimer, and thanks for making this your first listen each and every day. It's free wherever you get your podcast, and it's available on YouTube. So like, comment, and subscribe. Thanks for all support. Become an everyday listener of the Locked On UCLA podcast. So despite UCLA awaiting the word of whether some class of 23 guys or, some of the NBA draft class of 23 guys might come back, whether it's Clark, Bona, Campbell, other crazy surprises we don't know about, UCLA is already putting out feelers and offers to the class of 24. Coming up recently, I saw a tweet from the Compton Magic. Eric Freeney, a rising, soon-to-be senior guard in the class of 24, got his first Power 5 offer out of Corona Centennial, becoming the latest UCLA shooting guard offeree. He's only a 3-star. He's a top 20 player in the state of California, and UCLA says, all right, let's kind of give him a look. So he could be one of those players that UCLA sees in their own backyard. Like, hey, we should offer this guy and give him a chance, 6'3", 180. But he's one of the latest types of UCLA recruits that they're trying to go after. So let's take a look right now at who are some of these targets UCLA is kind of throwing feelers out for and what's warm and cool. They've gone and thrown feelers out for Flory Badunga. They've had Isaiah Elohim. And those are guys where it's like, all right, they're cool, whether it be in their own backyard, whether it be from another state. Those are guys that aren't as cool. But for Deaton Thomas, he's got a warm listing next to his name for the class of 24 on the 24/7 sports site for UCLA. You've got Jahil Bethea, Trent Perry, Sebastian Rainchik from Jay Sarah, and Eric Freeney. Those are the 4 guys that are warming up to UCLA. The majority of those, 2 of those guys are 4-stars between Bethea, a shooting guard. You've got a combo guard with Trent Perry, who's a 4-star out of Studio City, California from Harvard Westlake. Then you've got another power forward from Sebastian Rainchik, who's 6'9", and Eric Freeney is 6'3". So there's not really any true centers that UCLA is going after. And considering we're expecting a Damara to come potentially for this year and then head to the NBA draft after one season, UCLA would be looking for some size, considering Nuba's coming back for a 6th season. He'll be done. Bona, if he even comes back, will probably be another year and then done. So the Bruins will need some size, and while they've gone after a 6'9" center in Flory Badunga, he's very cool, the 5-star one of the top recruits in the country. And we saw last recruiting cycle how UCLA truly struggled to go after and get those top recruits. The year before, when they got Amari Bailey, and in years previous, slowly getting guys out of the portal for Mick Cronin. This year, I wonder how they'll try and recruit some of the top guys. Will they try and go get the under-the-radar international guys late in the game, which they've slowly started to do in 2022, going to get the likes of Abramo Zanka, coming and getting Ilan Fibileul, and then getting the rest of the recruiting class. I wonder what the combination is. Will be SoCal guys, top guys from other states, versus who can they really get. And while we don't really know who's going to stay beyond this next year, I'm not entirely sure we'll see as much roster decimation heading into the Big Ten as we're seeing from this year transitioning into the 2023 and 24 season. So I think this 24 recruiting cycle will be very crucial to UCLA's success in the Big Ten, regardless of who they get. If they're going to miss and swing and miss on like a Stojakovic, like that seemed like they had in their back pocket, whether it's whoever, I forgot the name of the guard who went to USC and committed, but there's different guys who are committing to other schools, and they were in their own backyard. They got some recruits, but even missing Mark Adams Jr., who's going to Kansas. He's still, I think, debating. I haven't heard necessarily whether he's 24 or 23. These are guys that UCLA is missing out on, and they have to have a good recruiting class, because when it comes to Big Ten time, that is when the competition gets stiff. So one wonders how long it'll take for Mick Cronin to start hammering in those Big Ten commits, right? Just like Chip Kelly is doing, which we'll get to in a moment. Who are going to be these Big Ten commits? A little different in football, of course, because they stay the 3 years or the redshirt 2 years or all 4 years. In basketball, it's all right, I got to start looking for the next guy year in and year out. How does this affect moving forward when I think basketball may transition back to a one and done or a two and done, as opposed to this older generation of college basketball with the COVID stars coming in? I just, it's an intriguing development for UCLA. And at the moment, they just threw out the offer to Freeney. I thought it was all right. Let's take a look at some of those guys. And they've thrown out at least 8 top targets from Madunga all the way down to Freeney. But so far, nobody's tried to be an early commit. Everybody likes to take as much time as they want, spread out all their offers, and with a year plus before even signing day, or even in the fall whenever they're going to sign, there's still plenty of looks. But there's 8 top targets for UCLA. Talk to you about them: Badunga, Elohim, Thomas, Ali, Bethea, Perry, Rainchik, and Freeney. At the recording of this podcast, I haven't seen if any of those guys have committed or one way or another. But those are the guys that they are going after. Not saying that they're going to get them or who's cold or who's warm. Those are the guys that, the 24/7 sports site, those are the guys that they're going after in the recruiting cycle. And I think it's very imperative UCLA gets some top-level guys. I know Mick Cronin has his type of guys he wants, but it's imperative for that first Big Ten year. You don't go in there and start sucking. So we'll see how that plays out. In the meantime, Chip Kelly's starting to throw out some, official visits, get some offers out there. I talked about this a little more, but they're going to have a quarterback come visit pretty soon. Let's take a look about what it has to do with. But first, we're going to tell you more about the likes of FanDuel, because FanDuel Sportsbook is, one of the top sportsbook in America, America's number one sportsbook. FanDuel, if you're a new customer, all you have to do is check out the no sweat first bet up to $1,000 back in bonus bets. All you have to do is go to FanDuel.com/lockedon. Again, FanDuel.com/lockedon. Sign up, place your first bet, and get up to $1,000 back in bonus bets if your first bet doesn't win. So if you want to go try and enjoy the playoffs this year, NBA, NHL, MLB, which is just in the beginning stages of their season, go check out a no sweat first bet up to $1,000 back if you join as a new customer if your first bet doesn't win by going to FanDuel.com/lockedon. FanDuel, an official partner of Major League Baseball and a sports betting partner here with us at Locked On. Cruising on into the second segment of Locked On UCLA, we talked about the other day with Max how UCLA football was just getting a couple of recruits in. They offered Isaiah Wilson. They got an offensive line commit, a 6'6" body offensive tackle from a legacy Bruin. So UCLA is slowly starting to begin their 2024 recruiting cycle. I believe they have a safety now. They have an offensive tackle, and they've been throwing out different, quarterback offers, because each year you got to stack up your quarterback room, whether Schlee moves on, whether the likes of Martin moves on for another opportunity, and heck, even Garbers, if he's going to move on, or say worst case scenario, if Dante Moore moves on. Those are all things UCLA has to consider each year, year in and year out, although I'm pretty confident that at the moment, the way things are playing out, the plan, how it plays out is one thing, but the plan, how it's supposed to play out, Dante Moore either plays, sits for a year, and then plays those next 2 years into the Big Ten play, and then eventually tries to take his talents to the NFL draft. That's seemingly what the design is for the quarterback position of the future. But still, it's nice to see who's coming in. Look at another 24/7 Sports article from Greg Biggins. Elijah Brown is beginning to, 4-star quarterback from modern day, kind of come together and choose his official visit dates. And overall, he's a top 70 prospect. And in terms of quarterbacks, the top 4-star quarterback that UCLA is looking at, he's looking more West Coast is Elijah Brown from modern day. He's going to have a official visit on May 5th, Cinco de Mayo, in a week from Friday. And maybe he'll go to USC. He's looking at Stanford. He's looking at ASU. And those are all the Pac-12 schools, soon to be Pac-12 and Big Ten, that he's looking like. And this is what he had to, quote, say about all the different schools he's looking at. One, ASU had a lot of fun at ASU, whatever that means. Everybody has a lot of fun at ASU. Visited after the tournament, met with his coaches, and he's, everything looked great in his visit to ASU. When it came to Stanford, he was talking about how he liked it, the culture change. Remember, Stanford no longer has David Shaw. They have a former Sac State head coach in Troy Taylor, who's an offensive genius and will throw the ball all around. So maybe he wants to go to Stanford, get a chance to play. Who doesn't want to go to Stanford for the academics? If he gets a chance to throw the ball and play initially, that could be an opportunity for Elijah Brown. For USC, he went to the spring game, hence that debate I talked about UCLA not having the spring game, which sucks because, yeah, you can have players come to practice, but if they don't come to a spring game, have a big event, and see the crowd, you're losing out on lots of recruits. Elijah Brown, what does he say about USC? I was at USC for the spring game and had a great time. That was my first spring game for any school, and it was fun to watch the offense, up close like that. You're telling me it wouldn't be fun to watch Chip Kelly's offense? This isn't an indictment of anything Elijah Brown said, but I'm just talking to you, you at home. Talk to me, whatever it is in the comments. This is where they're missing that spring game opportunity for the fans to connect, the recruits to connect, the players to connect, the coaches, everything. And that's where Elijah Brown says, hey, let's go across town. I went to a spring game. And if you're a West Coast school, it's a little different. SC put on the glitz and the glamour, and UCLA sitting there, and you have to go to the top of parking lot for the most part to go view the spring practice, right? If you're truly trying to get all of the ambiance, it's a little different. If you're going down and covering near the field, but if you're just trying to go watch from free viewing, you don't get that big Saturday afternoon barbecue enjoying the game. In the meantime, he did say, yes, Elijah Brown, the 4-star quarterback from Mater Dei, UCLA is a great school, and I had a good time at their spring practice. I like the offense a lot in the pace and the tempo, but you can see the difference in those two statements, right? I had a great time at USC spring game, and that was the first spring game, and it was fun to watch the offense up close like that, as opposed to I like the offense a lot, tempo to play with. You can read in between the lines a lot. You can read in between text or social media, everything. But just you can tell clearly the big difference there for UCLA not having a spring game and enticing these recruits to come. That's where you miss out on those opportunities, and Elijah Brown is a clear example. And I know maybe UCLA is not trying to get Elijah Brown. He might not even go to UCLA because he's not going to be the quarterback of the future. Brown, if he decides to go to an SC, they got quite a few quarterbacks stacked up there from Williams moving on most likely after this year, and then I forget who the next guy is. I think it's Malachi Nelson. And then, just kind of it goes up and down the list. Maybe he doesn't even go to USC. But just seeing the difference between those two statements, from the spring game to going to spring practice and saying one offense is fun versus the other. And considering Kyle Ford was just written in an article talking about the differences of the USC offense and the UCLA offense, I believe on the Bruin Report Online website, it's just interesting, the innovation that Chip Kelly can have, the tempo, the pace, everything's so fun about watching UCLA on offense, especially when they're clicking in all cylinders. And yet here we are just saying, practice was fun. Not the facilities, not all those things. Just they do a great job and they're great coaches, Chip Kelly and Ryan Gunderson, and be a great opportunity to be coach those guys. That doesn't sound like a positive statement that he's going to come to UCLA. Not that UCLA necessarily needs him and is putting all their efforts into recruiting this particular guy, but you can see where the missed opportunities slowly slip through the cracks. And while we know Chip Kelly can work anything in the portal, and when he truly wants a guy, he's proven I can go steal someone else's top recruit, I think we can see where UCLA is missing and dropping the ball here. Anyways, we're going to cruise on into segment 3 of Locked On UCLA. UCLA Baseball, it's not going to be a pretty segment talking about UCLA Baseball because they had a significant weekend. They were playing USC. The Bruins came into the weekend in Pac-12 play, hovering around 3rd or 4th based on a postponed game, a tie game. So they're amongst the top 3 or 4 in the Pac-12 standings coming into the weekend at 21-11-1 with a chance to vault up the Pac-12 standings and have an outside chance to either compete for the Pac-12 regular season title and improve their seeding for the likes of the Pac-12 tournament. In the meantime, they go to USC. The crowd was great. The weather was great. They played basically 2 night games and a Sunday evening game because they're local, so why not have a Sunday at 4? UCLA goes to SC. If you missed it for whatever reason, they went to Dado, won the Friday opener, which is key. You win the Friday opener, generally, things shake out your way to win the series. You have 2 opportunities to win either a Saturday or a Sunday, and then you win the series and you vault up the standings. No. Instead, UCLA loses the next 2, blows a 2-run lead late in the game on Sunday night, gets walked off on by the Trojans, and UCLA falls from 3rd to 5th behind both USC and Oregon. And some games you have to see that are crucial in terms of the standings. They tied Utah in a game that went nearly 4 hours in the travel curfew before Easter. So they don't even have double-digit wins yet in the Pac-12. They lost 2 at Washington State. Washington State is currently third worst in terms of Pac-12 record, and UCLA went and got swept. I know it was the snow in April, but still, you can't go get swept at Wazoo. And now you've fallen behind both Oregon and USC. If you win one of those games, you're 10-6, ahead of both Oregon and SC, and you're in third place, probably not in true contention to win the Pac-12 behind the 13-4 Sun Devils and the 13-5 Stanford Cardinal. But again, if you're top 3, that only helps your Pac-12 tournament seeding, and it helps your RPI. Currently, UCLA is sitting in the 40s when it comes to RPI. They were, for a long time, in the middle portion of the season, getting a lot of love in the top 25, regional love, in terms of hosting a regional. RPI was high early, but then losing a game to Davis, a team they should have swept, losing midweeks left and right. UCLA hasn't won a midweek in a few weeks, and they're taking on a tough LMU team on April 25th, the dropping of the day this podcast will drop. And lo and behold, they still have to go to Stanford this week, and that's a team that's competing for the Pac-12 championship. They still have to go to ASU at the end of the year. So all this to say, there's a small chance, maybe not even more of a small chance, there's a greater chance that UCLA could actually fly out of contention. They're sitting upper 40s in the RPI, and maybe for brand value, if UCLA is on the bubble, they're probably going to get the bump into the tournament and get thrown as a 3 seed and be forced to travel across the country to a much tougher regional. Instead, UCLA could have won these games, and looking at the SC game, that Sunday game is so brutal because, yes, they were down 3-0. You come all the way back, take a 5-3 lead heading into the bottom of the 7th, only to blow it, give up an unearned run, and then SC wins it with a Gabrielson single in the bottom of the 9th, as the error from Jack Holman kind of cost the Bruins, letting the tying run scored as an unearned run. It is nice to see that, all right, after a long stint out, Kyle Karros is back, had 3 RBIs, went 1 for 4 with big hits with a double and, having big swings, kind of clearing the bases in that 7th inning with a big double, bases clearing double. But UCLA just isn't as consistent up and down the line swinging the bat. They got all sorts of things just going wrong. And while SC is a much better team than they have been in years past, this is certainly a team that UCLA should have handled on the road and been able to beat on the road. This UCLA starting lineup, you take a look at their batting averages, only Kyle Karros is the only Bruin with a batting average over 300. So you can see where the struggles lie. They've had some starting pitching struggles, but for now, it's another year with John Savage where his offense is a little anemic at times, is probably the best way to put it. Deuce Gorson was having a great season, but he's kind of come back down to earth. John Vaughn's his big power. He's at 8 home runs. He's only hitting 240. The only other Bruin hitting over 300 is Keenan Proctor, and he started 1 time this season. So you can tell, and with Kyle Karros, he missed at least 6 to 7 games. He missed a couple weeks of games, 7 games or so, and only played in, he started 26, so he's played in a couple more than that. UCLA is just struggling to hit the ball in key moments. And while Karros got the big hit in the 7th inning, then you make the big defensive miscue, and as he takes advantage, that's where the small things lie this season. And while you can get hot and make it to a College World Series, this team just doesn't seem at this moment to have the making of a team that not only can make the College World Series, they're fighting for their tournament lives. If they go and struggle down the stretch, say you go to Stanford and get swept, you lose 2 out of 3 at Arizona State, lose some weird games to, say, Cal at home upcoming, and then struggle, go out early in the Pac-12 tournament, this team is in danger of missing the tournament. I think they're good enough to make it. They've got a solid enough RPI to get them in, but there's no more room for error. I thought in that middle portion of the season, you're playing a Utah, Washington State, and a UC Davis, and maximum you could have had there was 2 losses, and instead they ended up with 4 losses and a tie, or 3 losses and a tie against teams they should have ran away with in the middle of their season in the non-conference series and in a couple of Pac-12 series. So that's just where it's all coming together in the wrong way. And there's still another month. They can figure it out. And remember last year they had the crazy Pac-12 tournament win in the game coming back against Oregon State in the bottom of the ninth, but it's going to take a little more than some dramatic win to push them back in the right direction. There's still a lot to work on, but as I'm saying right now, UCLA only one hitter over 300, and of all the starters who have played the majority of the games, other than Kyle Karros, who did miss a little bit, they're all hitting 299, 270. Those aren't batting averages of players that are going to help succeed and push you in the tournament. And UCLA at this moment doesn't have the pitching numbers overall that can help. Jake Brooks, your Friday starter, has an ERA of 4.5. You've got Alonzo Treadwell, who's sitting at 3.5. And while Kelly Austin, who's generally been the Sunday starter, 50 and 2/3 innings, he's got an ERA of 2.5. You don't have that extremely dominant starting staff that can help push you over the top with an offense that's struggling at the moment. That's where it's just not working at this very moment for UCLA baseball. And John Savage has his tinkering he has to do. He's a good coach. He finds ways to win generally and push them into a regional. But this is, tough times, tough series coming up, and UCLA has to get the jobs done. They even have to win their midweeks because they got to keep that RPI as high as possible, not let it slip lower and lower in the RPI rankings. Thanks for tuning into this episode of Locked On UCLA. Max will be back on Wednesday. We'll try and talk any more basketball. We'll dive in a little deeper that way. Maybe we'll preview more volleyball. We'll do everything in between on the Locked On UCLA podcast. Hands up, UCLA fans. Time to get ready for that 8 clap, baby. And 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. UCLA. UCLA. Fight, fight, fight. This has been Locked On UCLA. Zach Anderson-Yoxsimer signing off. Go Bruins.